Last week in our project boat series, we used a Prevail sprayer and some custom matched Gelcoat to do a nice little repair job here on the corner of our project boat. Now folks, you don't have to spend a lot of money or have a lot of money to do this kind of repair. And that's why I love tools that you make at home. This little assortment of blocks has different shapes and contours. And all we've done here is wrap some 320 grit 3M paper on a foam block that I've shaped and contoured for the right size to wrap this paper around. Now, one of the other little blocks I like is sized to fit a standard disc. That is going to be some 400 grit we have going on. And if you follow the channel, you know that I'm a big fan of the 3M dry guide coat. That's going to allow us to see exactly where we have sanded and where we have not sanded. And it's so easy to apply this stuff. I generally like to turn the little cartridge upside down, spin it, and that's going to load that little foam pad. And then as we put it on in a circular motion, it kind of tells you where the gel coat is, or where you're going to be spraying, or where you've sprayed and where you're going to be sanding rather. And that should be plenty. Now, another trick of the trade for wet sanding is just take your standard little Zep sprayer, and I like to add 1 or 2 drops of a dishwashing detergent. Now, I've used Dawn for a long time, but other brands will work. You certainly can use what you have at home, but that seems to kind of help keep the sandpaper from clogging, and it also seems to break the surface tension and make sanding a little bit easier. I've also found that using your creeper is nice and easy on your knees. Now, when you're getting started with sanding, you don't want to go too aggressive initially. I find that probably 320 or 400 is going to be a good selection. So let's start with some 320. Generally, you're going to go from most aggressive to the finest in succession, and we're going to try to blast through this and make this a high value video for you folks. Going to wet everything down. We want to be sure there's no grit or sand or anything in your sandpaper on the surface that you're working on. And let's just start with this more aggressive paper, but we're going to stay right tight to where we sprayed the gel coat. You can see already how the guide coat is giving us an indication, showing some of the little imperfections on the surface where we maybe need to focus, where we can work most effectively. We don't want to waste time and energy. Now, one of the mistakes people make a lot of times, I think, with sanding a gel coat repair is they get out too far around the edges or outside of where they actually sprayed gel coat. And I would recommend staying tight to the initial repair. And with the more aggressive paper, we're not going to do an awful lot of sanding. We kind of just want to knock down the big lumps and bumps there. Now, this is a pretty beat up project boat. If you're new to the series, first off though, I'd like to welcome everybody to our family's boat shop. My name is Joe Buskins. I'm a second generation professional boat builder, a 100-ton licensed captain. This is our family's boat shop. In the winter months, we build and repair boats. In the summer months, we actually captain and run charters out of our custom built 29-footer that's there in the background. Clean your paper, clean off the residue. And you can see already we've made a lot of progress just with hand tools. You do not have to have expensive power tools, although it's nice if you do. Sometimes with this finesse work, it's better to do it by hand though, and you're less likely to take off too much material. That is probably one of the things I would have to warn people about, is sanding too aggressively. And honestly, for your initial cut, that is probably going to be quite all right with the 300 or 320 rather. I think I'm going to jump right to the 400, but I like to sand, or I like to apply the guide coat between each pass. If you don't do that, it can be really tricky to be sure that you've got everything done uniformly. Even though this boat is beat up, if you're working on a really nice boat at home, these steps matter, and each step is important. So be mindful. You just don't want to skip around. follow it in succession, and you're gonna get some good results. That is one of the things with the dry guide coat, that if you try to put it on a damp surface, you're gonna get some gumming and caking. Notice, turn it upside down, rotate the little disc, right side up, and we're gonna do one more coat, and that way we know exactly where to sand and how far we've gone. I'll be sure to put a link to the dry guide coat, sandpaper, everything that we're using here on the channel for y'all's convenience. We have a really nice Amazon store now with pictures and descriptions and everything to help everybody. The gel coat we used in the previous video, materials and supplies, whatnot, you're gonna find all of that there. Okay, so we're moving right now to some 400, which is a very popular grit, and a smaller block. I made that out of a piece of teak, I believe, on another boat project that we were working on. Start from the top, work our way down. Blocks are actually a really good way to get a very true and straight surface. Sometimes with power tools, the pads are going to be a little softer, a little more flexible, and you actually may not get as true a surface. 400 works very quickly. And remember to stop. Like, once you have removed the guide coat for each phase or pass, there is no point in doing a lot more sanding after. Now this is interesting to see. If you'll notice, you can kind of see a bit of a geometric pattern forming in here. That is actually the print through of the Roven that this boat is built out of, kind of imprinting through, and the guide coat is highlighting all of that. I'm going to go ahead and show what we can do with the 400. We're going to take some of those out. Now sometimes, as I mentioned in the previous video when we were working on this, the guide coat can make you a little crazy sometimes, because it'll show every little scratch and highlight every little ding and imperfection. But if you're truly trying to sand this out and buff it out, you want to see how far the damage goes. And it's very hard to see that or feel that with your hand, especially when there's water on the surface and there's residue from sanding. It really speeds things up. Now, you don't have to use it. And there was a time when it wasn't around. But what you have to do if you're going to do that is between each coat or each pass, you basically have to dry it off and just look with your eyes and look for little imperfections. And that can be very time consuming. Now on the flip side of this, if you've got some power tools and some compressed air, you certainly could jump right over to a DA or a dual action sander. There again, we're running some 400. This is a Hutchins dual action, a Hutchins, and they are fantastic professional grade power tools. If you're wanting some air tools that'll last a lifetime, I've had this one over 20 years and it has been excellent. I'm just going to do a real quick pass with it. Up, down, back and forth. Notice I'm not staying in one place for a long time. You absolutely want to keep moving. And the idea is to not stay right where a low spot is. Like if you're seeing these little imperfections, you do not want to take the edge of the DA and try to sand that away. You basically want to bring all the other surfaces kind of down to it. Although if it's fairly deep, you got to be very careful not to sand too far. So that's where kind of learning, I've said in other videos, maybe practicing on an older boat or somewhere on your boat that is less conspicuous is not a bad idea. So we're good and clean there. Same deal, going back, it's kind of a rinse, wash, repeat deal. Little, maybe monotonous to some people. But I actually find it very therapeutic to do this kind of work. I think a lot of people are maybe missing this in their lives these days, and that's why they enjoy rebuilding, repairing, fixing stuff up. Going out a little bit further each time. Now usually 600 to 1200 is going to be the final phase. Sometimes you will go finer than 1200. I'm going to run this out a little further with each successive pass. But generally, especially again on a newer, nicer boat, you want to keep it localized if you can. You want to keep it fairly tight, fairly close to where the initial damage was. Sometimes that's not possible. So we got a box of the 400. We moved through that. We're going to go to some 600 at this point. What's cool about these little Velcro sticky pads is that you can save those and use them again. They're not necessarily wore out completely after you go through a phase like this. And with the cost of materials these days, I would recommend using them or getting as much life out of them as you can. I'd love to hear what kind of projects you folks at home are working on. Been very interesting to hear from people all over the country and all over the world. So thank you so much for tuning in. And feel free to comment down below. Let us know what you're working on. And I'd love to hear some content suggestions from everybody. It's always good for us because sometimes you're like, what do we do next? Obviously, we're moving forward with the project boat. Stringers, foam flotation, fuel tanks. But even beyond this project boat, what are we going to work on? So your thoughts are greatly appreciated. 600 grit. Now we've switched brands. This is going to be some 3M. So it just shows there's a variety of materials. We're maybe getting a little bit beyond where we initially worked or where we have to go, but I want to try to show you all the full effect. You can see we're a little low right in here. You got to be really careful on these edges with a power tool, and that may be a case where I would shift back, and you can take your disc off of your sander if you've done the bulk of your coverage, and you can certainly use your block and finish out some of the finer details of the 600 grade, like right here on the corners here. Maybe you can see the guide coat is still in place. Corners and edges are going to be tricky, folks. Machines will burn through the gel coat sometimes. That is one of the finesse parts of gel coat repair that gets people sometimes, is they spend too much time on corners and edges. If you do it by hand, it's going to take material off a lot slower, less likely to have a problem. Sometimes too, just for getting in a spot, like for example, that's a pretty tight spot. We can't really get our DA in there. Also good exercise, folks. It'll burn some calories doing this kind of stuff. I'm gonna do a little bit of a circular motion as we move along, sometimes inline at a diagonal. You can change direction and go the other way diagonally. You just want to go a little while, check your progress, clean it off, go a little further. This boat has a lot of work ahead of us. And this boat, a lot of folks may not realize, but this is a project boat we acquired just for content creation for the channel. So this is for you folks at home. And some of the steps we're doing here, I've had some people ask me, like, man, is this boat even worth the time and effort we're putting into it? And you know, sometimes that question is a maybe. We're gonna put a lot of effort into it. It's gonna be a really good boat when we're all done. But the cool thing is the techniques that we're showing you, you can apply to your boat that maybe you've had in your family for a long time, or you don't have a repairman in your area, or just the estimates that you've gotten to do this kind of work are very high. This kind of work can be expensive. And the guys that do it professionally out there, any of you that are watching, it is, they're worth it. Professionals at this have taken years to learn, but in a lot of areas it's hard to find people that do this kind of work anymore. And some older boats, you just can't justify the amount of money it might cost to hire a professional, but you can certainly do a lot of this work yourself. We're going with 800 grit at this point. Rinse, wash, repeat. The finer the grits go, the faster you tend to work through these phases because you're only taking a tiny bit of material off each pass. Of course, it may seem obvious. We're going to start kind of rinsing from the top, work our way down. If you folks at home are enjoying the content that we're putting out and the hard work we put into these videos, if you would take just a second or two and hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying what we're doing. Also, like, share, tell a friend. That helps YouTube algorithm. The more the channel grows, the more of these kind of videos we can do for you folks at home. So thank you so much, if you don't mind. All right, here we go. You can see there's a little bit of a low. The guide code is showing us where we've been. Kind of just working back and forth a little bit up in here. All right, that should do it. The beauty of the guide code, again, is it shows you exactly when you've gone far enough. Once the guide code is gone, time to clean it off and go to the next phase. There again, we can see the guide code slightly low right there. There's a little shadowing, but I'm never going to use the edge and try to just make it go away. You want to keep the disc flat. Go back and forth over the whole area. These gouges here are quite deep, so we're not going to be able to sand those out. But sometimes little minor ones, you can. It's a feel thing. You got to remember, gel coat on a lot of boats is only as thick as maybe a dime or 5 or 6, 7 sheets of paper. It's not going to be terribly thick. This boat was actually thicker than you might imagine on some, seen some very high-end boats where the gel coat was actually very, very thin. And you do not want to sand through. So we're going to save this for later. That's not completely worn out. You might use it on another project at some point. And we're going to switch brands. 3M makes good stuff, but I've used this Sunmite before, and we're going to 1200. Highly recommend getting one of these little pads for your DA. And it's got the Velcro on it. That's much, much better in my opinion than the adhesive ones. If you get the adhesive ones, They tend to get wet, water gets underneath them. It's very, very hard to get successive discs to stick to that wet pad. Come on down. So we've moved right on through this phase with the 1200 grit on the last pass. And it's pretty exciting at this point. If you get your eyes at a really low angle to the boat, you can actually start to see some gloss and shine developing at that 1200 mark or so, sometimes even sooner. I hope the camera picks that up, by the way. It's kind of one of those things, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But what we've got are a few little scratches, and sometimes there's going to be a little bit of residual, some of the guide coat in there, and acetone works quite well to take some of that out, and a cloth. Now some of those are quite deep. The compound in a lot of phases can take it out as well, but that is typically what you're going to do if you have any of the guide coat as a residual, is just go over it with a little bit of acetone on a rag, and you should be good to go at that point. Now, I want to talk a little bit about buffing pads. There's not just going to be one standard pad that you're going to use typically. Like, we are going to be using some fairly aggressive fast cutting compound. Now this is aqua blue. This is something we buy through like one of our main suppliers. Fiberglass Warehouse has all kind of stuff like this available for you folks. They've also got a Fish Bump TV discount code. So everything from compound and waxes to the buffing pads that we're using. But I want to show you a little trick. I like to keep my buffing pads inside a little Tupperware container, and when we use them, we're going to clean them out real good and then store them in there, and that way they stay nice and clean and dry and free of contaminants, because you do not want dust particles and whatnot getting in your buffing pad. Now something else to remember, you will notice we've got a white pad on my machine right now. That's going to be for your heavy cut. That's going to be your most aggressive pad. Yellow is going to be a medium cut, and then your blue is going to be more of like a polish and a wax pad. So just remember, not all buffing pads are the same. Sometimes it can be confusing, but white for rough, yellow for mid, and then the blue for the finer stuff. Now a lot of times before I start to buff, I do like to use a little compressed air. But just be sure there's nothing on that pad. You're gonna want to be careful not to go this way, it'll grab. If you go in line with it, it's gonna be completely fine. Now again, remember, this is the fast cut, so that's gonna be the most aggressive. And what's cool about this, it does give you some directions here. It tells you a little bit about what it's going to do and how to work it in. But as a rule of thumb, it's going to take a couple little dabs. It's about all you need. Sometimes we will brush it over the entire area. You'll find a feel for it. You don't want to go too much, especially after you have some rolling along. You'll kind of find the sweet spot. I also personally like to kind of moisten the buffing pad up just a little bit, and I'm running this thing on a low speed. So that's one of the things about this buffer. This is a Bosch GP71 2VS. That's a variable speed right there. You can kind of speed that up, slow it down. Now my alternate machine is this big DeWalt right there. There's your part number on the DeWalt. This thing is also a variable speed, but it weighs about twice as much as this one. So for most people, a mid-size machine is going to be fine. That one is a heavy-duty, legit, professional grade unit. Now I usually like to kind of just work the material into the pad a little bit and start at a low speed, nice and easy. gonna go left to right, up and down. Just taking my time here. Very important to remember, this thing will grab articles of loose clothing and your cord can get wound up in it. So be sure to keep loose objects, long hair, all that, keep it free from this machine because it'll certainly suck it in there. And just nice and level, up and down. Left and right. There we go. I believe we're already making nice, oh yeah. Come on along over here at a nice low angle. I believe you can start to see a shine versus if you move back here a little bit, you can see how flat and dull the original surface is. Now, at this point, you may see some little swirl marks in there and you may decide to go ahead with another pass of compound. It's quite all right at this point to brush a little bit more on and maybe make another pass or two till you're happy with the shine you've got there. But for the sake of time tonight, I'm gonna move right ahead. So I'll also show you folks, we wanna clean this before that thoroughly dries. But on these Velcro pads, it's a easy matter of removing that. Let's go to the yellow. That's gonna sit in just nice and easy, just like so. Sometimes you gotta play around with how they sit in the pad or else they will wobble. We don't want that. Same deal. You might have seen there is a little bit of dust coming out of there. This thing's been in storage for a couple months. We're gonna get some of that residual. Also very important to note, I'm not wearing a mask of any kind right now for audio, but I have a fan moving air this way and one pushing it that way. A lot of these abrasives make dust that you do not want to breathe. So some PPE would be important. Eye protection, gloves, and a good mask while you're buffing and compounding. Not a bad idea. So here we go with our buffing and polishing compound. This is going to be a little bit finer material. It's going to get a little more shine out of our gel coat surface. Fiberglass Warehouse has some fantastic products and at incredibly competitive prices. I know a lot of you folks out there DIYing this, and you're doing this because man, it can be expensive to do this kind of work and you're trying to save a little bit of money. And if you can find a source for it that's going to be less expensive than their competitors, that's going to be a plus. And Fiberglass Warehouse, I have found that they are very, very competitively priced on a lot of their products. Now I'm going to go a little heavy on this initial pass just because the pad that I'm using right now is like 100% clean. There's no residue compound in there. If you had been compounding a pretty good bit, a lot of times there's residual compound and you don't have to put near that much on. It's also something, again, that'll come with a little bit of feel. Little bit of water on the pad. Oh, just let it down. First, let's work it in a little bit. Otherwise, it'll sling material everywhere. all you need. Now we are starting to get somewhere. Come on over here, maybe we'll get another low camera angle. And you can absolutely start to see we are getting some reflection there and shine. This boat probably hasn't had a shine on it in 10 years or more. So that's pretty cool to see. Now, again, for the sake of time, I'm trying to hurry this along for everybody. A lot of times what I may do after we've done some compounding is rinse some of that compound off of there prior to wax application. You can use a garden hose and some car wash, or just a nice biodegradable boat detergent is fine. I've got a little bit of Dawn dishwashing detergent from our sanding mix in there. Again, folks, if you are enjoying the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And for you folks out there that are got projects that you need one-on-one consulting and help with, Patreon is the way to do that. So we've got a lot of folks working with us right now on major projects, and if maybe they're needing direct consulting and they're looking for something outside of the 150 videos we got here on our channel, you can call me direct. So Patreon is the way to do that, and I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters that are currently working with the channel. You folks out there know who you are, and we couldn't do all these projects if it wasn't for your support. So thank you so much. All right, here we go. We're wiping that residue off of there. Each phase now at this point gets to be a little more fun because you can see the results. Maybe we can get one more nice low camera angle. You can really start to see some distinction of image and some shine. Now again, this is a pretty old boat and it's in pretty rough shape, so for you folks at home, don't expect absolute perfection on these older boats. That might not be realistic. Now, varying opinions on wax for boats. I like the Colonite Fleet Wax. It's very, very decent. I've been using it for years, but I'm getting a lot of requests to try like some of the polymer waxes and maybe even some of the ceramic coating. So y'all let me know down below if you'd like to see some of that. Maybe time to clean up our 29 after a summer of fishing hard out in the Gulf and cleaning that thing up and waxing. It's probably in line. So let me know if you'd like to see some different products. So this is very important to seal your gel coat at this point. So we have sanded it. We've got some new gel coat in play. You notice I'm kind of going in a circular motion to load that terry cloth towel. We'll start right at the front, and really nice, heavy, overlapping passes. This particular brand of wax does a really nice job. A lot of times I'll do a circular motion. I'll go back and forth. We'll start here at the back again. Circular motion forward. Now this is important. A lot of people don't give the wax a little time to tack off or cure. I find that usually 5 to 10 minutes is the case. So I'm gonna let this stand for about 5 or 10 minutes. We're gonna pull that residue off there and see what the final results are. So I'm pretty pleased with the results here, folks. Come in here, look down the edge. Now you can really start to see, I've already started pulling some of this wax off. You can see right in here, there's a little change in luster or sheen. That is because there's still a little more wax on the surface. I don't know how many of you folks remember Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi there. Sometimes one coat is enough. Not a bad idea to put 2 coats on there if you have the time and you have the material. Take your time with that. Give it a few minutes to cure. There again, maybe you can get a real low camera angle and see the luster and the shine. I'm seeing it real good from this side here. I know y'all want to see the results. Sometimes I don't know till after editing how well the camera picked up what we've done there. But if you remember the big old chunk or divot that we had right out of that corner, Now, Gelcoat repair, especially on older boats, can sometimes be frustrating if you've never done it because perfection is pretty hard to achieve. There's almost always going to be some slight variation in color, or sometimes around the edges of where the new material is and the old boat are. You just got, say, 25-year-old Gelcoat and brand new Gelcoat, but a lot of times it'll weather in. So if you put it in service, use it a little while, there'll kind of be some blending and fading, and a lot of times it becomes very hard for people to see it or find it. So I am pretty pleased with that result. Overall, I hope you folks at home enjoyed the work we put into that video. Remember, if you did, like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. Check out our Amazon store below our video's links. And if you folks at home need any of the Gelcoat that we used, some of the clear additive that we used, and then the aqua blue, if you want to buy this, when you buy it in these larger containers, folks, the price versus what you're going to pay at some of your retail outlets is substantially less. So be sure to check out Fiberglass Warehouse and use your Fish Bump TV code for a discount. Captain Joe here, Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV. My son Logan working hard behind the scenes as my amazing cameraman. And we'll catch you folks in the next episode.